Hello there, everybody, on this sunny Saturday morning. Yeah, this is the day of our wild, weird, and wacky world of the Word. And what are we going to look at today? We're going to be talking a little bit of Jeremiah. That is where our Older Testament reading from the Revised Common Lectionary comes for this coming Sunday. But we're not going to focus on those verses that we have for Sunday. We did that earlier. You can look through my videos and find that. But instead, we're going to talk about how we have the book of Jeremiah that we have in front of us today. How did it get there? Because it's a wild, weird, and wacky ride for it to get there. Just a little bit of history to put things in perspective. The king of Israel, during the time that Jeremiah began his prophecy, was Josiah. And he was killed in battle in the year 609 BCE. Now, after he was killed, there were several kings who came in Judah, and they were lousy. They were just terrible. And that's when Jeremiah stepped up to the plate and began his prophecies against the nation, against the kings, against the other nations as well. And his prophecies lasted from the year 609, when Josiah was killed, all the way to 586. And that is when he passed away down in Egypt. Well, how did he get down there? Well, the Babylonians had been pecking away at the empire for a while, meaning the Jewish empire, what was left of it there in Judah. And there were many people who were deported to Babylon in the year 597 BCE, but the biggest chunk of people, the what we call the Babylonian Exile, occurred in 586. And that's the year that Jeremiah did not end up in Babylon, but down in Egypt, and that's where he died. Now, when we look at the book of Jeremiah, we know, and most scholars agree with this now, it went through a ton of revisions from the time it was written while some of his disciples were in Babylon. They're the ones that remembered his prophecies and wrote them down. So when it was written there all the way to the first century BCE, there's a ton of revisions, and they know this because of the language, the different ways it's put together. In fact, there's a good way to tell what was actually spoken by Jeremiah and then what was plugged in later by these revisionists. What was spoken by Jeremiah is wondrous poetry. You have that all the way through. In fact, part of our text for this coming Sunday is poetry. And what was written by the revisionists, we call them the Deuteronomist revisionists. Yeah, just know that these were a group of people who kind of worked with the word to make it relevant to the people of their day. Well, that's just in prose style. And the style of language and usage of verbs and this, that, and the other is a lot different. So that's how we know it was played around with quite a bit all through that time. And another way that we know is that we look at the Dead Sea Scrolls. Hey, that is the best stuff that ever happened to us. The Dead Sea Scrolls containing practically the entire Older Testament all together in one place. Well, when it comes to the book of Jeremiah, there's a problem there in that they have several different versions of the book of Jeremiah amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls. And also, when we look at the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew books into Greek, because that's what the people were speaking at the time, and these were written in the years between 300 and 200 BCE, we notice that there are some chapters missing from that text that were in the older Hebrew texts. Now, the Deuteronomists, those were the ones who were responsible for our books of Joshua, Judges, the 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings. Okay, those books of the Bible. And here's a good example of how we know that it was written by these people and it was revised by these people. Go to chapter 52 of Jeremiah someday. Just take a look at it. And then keep your finger there and flip back to 2 Kings 24, verse 18, all the way to 2 Kings chapter 25, verse 30. And you're going to say, hold the phone. What's going on here? Plagiarism, plagiarism. It's word to word the same. Word to word the same. So those who were working on putting the scriptures together said, hey, there's this big chunk of Kings that we want to include in the book of Jeremiah itself. And that's what they did. They just lifted it and placed it right at the end. So that's kind of an interesting thing. But the other thing about the Septuagint is that there was enough left out of it that it's shorter by about 1/8 of the Hebrew the Hebrew version of Jeremiah, shorter by 1/8. Also, it rearranges parts of the book itself and puts it in different places within the book than the Hebrew text does. So it's really, really kind of strange. Now, here's what's even more interesting. The Greek Orthodox Church has their book of Jeremiah that comes directly from the Septuagint, the Greek translation. Whereas the Jewish church today, the Jewish synagogues, their Tanakh, which is their Bible, no, it's from the Hebrew text. However, it's a Hebrew text that was retranslated back from the Septuagint, but they also had other Hebrew documents as well. So they have the longer version in their Bible, which is our Older Testament, and we too have that same version in our Bibles in most of Western Christianity. So it's kind of fascinating how that played out all the way through the different translations and the copying of the text, this, that, and the other. Now, the other thing to know about Jeremiah, his prophecies were so influential during the time of exile and the post-exilic period when they're rebuilding Jerusalem, when Cyrus the Persian had come to power and let the people go back home. They were so influential that there were 3 additional books written that were attributed to Jeremiah, but it's very likely they were not written by him, but his name is stamped on them anyhow. And that's the book of Baruch, Lamentations, and also the letter of Jeremiah. Those 3 things. Now, in the Septuagint that we have, the Greek version of the Old Testament, those 3 books are placed right between Jeremiah and Ezekiel. They're just sandwiched right in there. Now, in our modern Protestant Bibles that we use, and also in the Jewish Tanakh, there's only the book of Lamentations that also appears in there. However, when you get to the Catholic Bible that has the Apocrypha in it, it has the book of Baruch in it, as well as Lamentations, and as well as the letter of Jeremiah. Only the letter of Jeremiah isn't separate. It's included as the 6th chapter of the book of Baruch. So it's kind of really wacky and weird. And it also goes to show you that when we start talking about Bibles, even in our Christian ranks, you have to be a little more specific and say, which Bible? And I don't mean by that Revised Standard Version, King James Version, the Message. No, we're not talking that. We're talking which Bible that has which books of the Bible in it, because there's a wide range and wide variety of that throughout Christendom, throughout the world. Just keep all that in mind, because for the most part we have mostly the same books, but some have more and some have less. It's just because it's part of the wild, weird, and wacky world of the Word. But it's a good word because it's a word that tells us about our relationship with God, where we should be in that relationship with God, and just how much God loves you and He loves me. Blessings be with you. And I probably should say, just as much as the Spirit works in our lives. Yes. And she does her wondrous works in our lives. Blessings be with you.